Chapter 1: A Dream in Samarkand. Snow danced over the rooftops of Samarkand. In a quiet palace, a boy stood alone, staring out the frosted window. His name was Babur, 12 years old, small in size, but in his heart, fire. In his eyes, empire. "I will rule one day," he whispered, "not just this land, but lands beyond." His bloodline was thunder. Timur the Lame, Genghis Khan. He was born of conquerors, raised on war songs, but even blood cannot shield you. His uncles schemed. His allies fled. His army, barely a whisper. His kingdom, Fergana, no bigger than a shadow. Yet Babur fought, fierce, fearless. He took Samarkand, lost it, took it again, lost everything. With nothing left but will, he fled to Kabul. There among the hills, he sharpened his mind, forged steel from sorrow, built an army from dust. He was patient. He was ready. For beyond the snowy mountains lay a land whispered in stories, Hindustan, a land of gold and glory, of spice and silk, of kings, gods, and dreams. Babur could feel its pull, not just a place, a destiny. He would go, he would fight, he would rise, and one day, the world would remember his name. Chapter 2: Storms of Ambition. Babur's path was not a road, it was a mountain, steep, sharp, cruel. He had lost his kingdom, lost his crown, but not his will, never his will. In the wild city of Kabul, he began again. He gathered loyal men, desperate, daring, dangerous. He trained them like blades. He studied, wrote poetry by candlelight, dreamed by starlight, but above all, he watched, south, to India, to Hindustan. The Delhi Sultanate was crumbling, its throne weak, its ruler, Ibrahim Lodi, ruled through fear. His nobles plotted, his generals whispered. Babur saw a kingdom ready to fall. He only had to push. So he crossed the mountains, into destiny. Through the icy teeth of the Khyber Pass came an army, small, sharp, silent, but carrying thunder, gunpowder, cannons, tactics no Indian army had seen. Lodi waited in Delhi with thousands, war elephants, cavalry, rows of spearmen. But they were slow, heavy, trapped in old ways. Then came the morning of April 21st, 1526. Panipat, a dusty field that would shape empires. Drums pounded, cannons roared, steel clashed. The sky turned to smoke. Babur's guns shattered elephants. His men flanked, turned, struck like lightning. Lodi fell in battle. His empire fell with him. By sunset, the throne of Delhi was Babur's, and from its ashes, the Mughal Empire was born. Not just a victory, a storm that would rule for centuries. Chapter 3: The Battle for Hindustan. Babur stood at the edge of the ridge, staring down at the lush plains of Hindustan. The land stretched endlessly, golden in the sun, waiting. "Kabul is behind me," he said. "Destiny lies ahead." His army was small, barely 12,000 men, but it was fierce, fast, and ready. With them, he marched through the Khyber Pass, facing cold winds and sharp cliffs. In Delhi, Sultan Ibrahim Lodi ruled, proud and stubborn. His army was nearly 100,000 strong, with elephants, archers, and cavalry. But Babur had something Lodi didn't: strategy. Babur positioned his troops in a narrow line, using carts tied with ropes to protect his cannons. Behind them, musketeers waited. On April 21st, 1526, the two forces met at Panipat. At dawn, drums thundered, arrows flew, cannons roared. Babur's trap worked. Lodi's men rushed forward and fell into chaos. Smoke covered the field. Babur's men moved like shadows. By midday, Lodi was dead, his army crushed. Delhi opened its gates. The people watched in awe as Babur rode in. The Mughal Empire was born, but Babur knew winning was just the beginning. Chapter 4: The Tiger's Roar. Babur sat upon the throne of Delhi, but the land was far from tamed. Rebellions sparked. Old rulers plotted revenge. His men were tired, his treasury thin. Still, Babur pushed forward. He marched to Agra, took the fort, claimed the treasures of old sultans. He wrote in his diary, "The heat is great, the mangoes delicious, but the people strange." His words were sharp, but his sword sharper. Rajputs from Mewar rose to fight. Their leader, Rana Sanga, was fierce and proud. Babur knew this battle would decide everything. He prayed, gave up wine, promised God a holy war. Then he faced Rana Sanga at Kanwa. It was brutal. Dust choked the air. Arrows darkened the sky. Babur used cannon fire again. His enemies had never seen such thunder. The Rajput army broke. Babur won. Now no one doubted his right to rule. The tiger had roared, and all of Hindustan had heard it. Chapter 5: Sons of the Empire. Babur ruled Hindustan, but peace never lasted. He missed the mountains of Kabul, the cool winds, the smell of pine. But he had work to do. He wrote his life story, Baburnama, filled with battles, poems, and thoughts. He loved beauty, gardens, and books, but his body weakened. He grew ill. His son Himayo stood by his side. When Himayo fell sick, Babur walked around his bed praying. He said, "Take my life instead." And soon Babur died. Himayo recovered. The empire passed to him. But ruling was not easy. Enemies circled, brothers turned jealous, and a storm was coming. Chapter 6: The Genius of Akbar. Himayo lost the empire to Sher Shah Suri. Years of exile followed. Then he returned and died falling downstairs. His young son, Akbar, became emperor at just 13. But Akbar was no ordinary child. He had the mind of a ruler and the heart of a warrior. Guided by his mentor Behram Khan, he crushed rebels and took back Delhi. Then he ruled, not just with the sword, but with wisdom. He ended taxes that hurt the poor. He married Rajput princesses, invited Hindus, Sikhs, Jains to his court. He built Fatehpur Sikri, his dream city. He created a new religion, Din-e-Ilahi, a mix of many faiths. He asked hard questions, debated holy men, listened more than he spoke. People called him Akbar the Great because he was. He made the empire strong, not just in size, but in soul. Even enemies respected him. He was not just a king, he was an idea. Chapter 7: The Rebel Prince. Salim was born in a palace of dreams, but raised in the shadow of a giant. His father, Akbar the Great, ruled like a god, wise, fair, unshakable. But Salim, he was fire, bold, charming, impatient. He wanted the crown, not someday, now. Whispers filled the halls. "The prince rebels," they said. Akbar was hurt, but calm. He did not strike, he forgave. But Salim's fire had tasted freedom. Still, the aging emperor watched his son with a heavy heart. Years passed. Akbar grew weak. Old wounds, fevers, and the weight of an empire wore him down. He fell ill, too ill to rise. In his final moments, he called for Salim. The rebel prince came, silent and pale. Akbar took his hand. "Rule with justice," he said, "or the crown will burn you." Then Akbar, emperor, philosopher, warrior, closed his eyes forever. The world held its breath. Salim became Emperor Jahangir, and the empire changed. He painted the sky with color, loved poetry, wine, music, but above all, he loved Nur Jahan. She was no quiet queen. She ruled from behind a veil of silk, but her hand was steel. Coins bore her name. Generals feared her. Courtiers bowed twice. Together they were unstoppable until shadows returned. Salim's own son, Khusrau, rose with swords and traitors. The empire shook. Elephants charged. Blades flashed under moonlight. Jahangir stood tall. "Bring him to me," he said. The prince was caught, the rebellion crushed. Jahangir looked into his son's eyes and saw himself, but he could not allow mercy now. Power, he learned, was not peace. It was a storm, always circling, always hungry. Chapter 8. The Lion's Heart. When Emperor Jahangir drew his last breath, the throne passed to his son, Shah Jahan. The court held its breath. Could this prince rule with strength? Oh yes, he could. Shah Jahan was a warrior, a commander of thunder and fire. He crushed rivals, rode into battle like a lion, but beneath the armor beat a soft heart. He loved one woman more than power itself, Taj Mahal. She was his queen, his friend, his soul's twin. They ruled side by side, laughing in gardens, whispering in moonlight. Peace reigned, joy bloomed, until fate struck a cruel blow. In a battlefield camp, far from the palace, Mumtaz went into labor, her 14th child. The screams came at midnight. The silence came at dawn. Mumtaz was gone. Shah Jahan fell to the ground, broken. He locked himself away, refused food. His beard turned white in weeks. But from his pain, he built a miracle, a tomb of dreams, of marble, of love, the Taj Mahal. White as moonlight, silent as sorrow. The world gasped. Poets sang. Artists wept. And love itself bowed before it. But time, like power, is never gentle. As Shah Jahan aged, the winds shifted. His sons began to whisper, then to plot. Eyes once full of loyalty now burned with greed. The lion had loved too deeply. And now the jackals circled. Chapter 9. Brothers at war. The empire stood tall, but in its shadows, fire brewed. Shah Jahan's sons, born of the same blood, carved from different storms. Dara Shikoh, the eldest, a gentle soul, a lover of poetry, wisdom, and peace. Aurangzeb, the third, cold as steel, sharp as lightning, burning with ambition. They smiled at each other in public, but behind closed doors, daggers were drawn. Then Shah Jahan fell ill. The throne wobbled. The empire watched, breathless, and war erupted. Not just words, steel, not just whispers, battle cries. 4 brothers, 1 crown, 1 survivor. The sky thundered with cannons. Rivers ran red. Dara rode with faith, honor, and love. Aurangzeb rode with strategy, cruelty, and fate. He trapped Dara, chained him like a thief. He paraded his brother through the streets of Delhi. And then, he had him executed. Not with rage, with silence. One brother's dream, shattered. The other's sword, unstained. And Shah Jahan? He awoke from sickness to chains. Aurangzeb locked his own father in a tower, high above the Yamuna River. Shah Jahan spent his final years watching the Taj Mahal, the tomb of his love, through a tiny window. He died there, alone, not slain by sword, but by sorrow, a prisoner of his own blood. Chapter 10. The Emperor of Iron Aurangzeb sat on the throne, but never sat still. He ruled for 49 years, nearly half a century of war, ambition, and iron rule. He wore simple clothes, slept little, prayed more. But behind his piety burned a cold fire. He expanded the Mughal Empire to its greatest size. Mountains, deserts, forests, rivers, all bowed. But this was no golden age. He ruled not with love, but with fear. Temples were destroyed, ancient customs outlawed. Attacks returned, the hated jizya. The people grumbled. Then they rose. Music was banned, drums silenced, poets vanished. Where once emperors held salons of art and reason, now there was silence. But silence breeds rebellion. From the south rose the Marathas, swift as tigers, fierce as fire. From the north came the Sikhs, unbreakable, unafraid. Mountains trembled, forts fell. Aurangzeb fought them all. He was tireless, fearless. But time, even for emperors, whispers its own rebellion. His hands trembled. His beard turned white. He wrote his own Quran by hand, seeking peace in pages while the world around him burned. At 88 years old, surrounded by maps and enemies, Aurangzeb died, not in battle, not in glory, but in loneliness. The empire he built was vast, greater than any before, but it was cracking, too large to hold, too tired to heal. The iron had ruled, but even iron rusts. Chapter 11, The Crumbling Throne. Aurangzeb's shadow faded, and with it, the glory. The empire did not fall in a day. It shattered, piece by piece, one weak emperor after another. Thrones changed hands like dice in a gambler's game. Nobles grew fat with gold, but hollow with greed. Armies fought not for honor, but for coins. The heart of the empire, Delhi, beat slower. Then came the storm. Nader Shah of Persia rode in like a nightmare. Through the gates of Delhi, his soldiers marched like smoke and steel. The city screamed. Blood ran through the Chandni Chowk. He took the peacock throne, the symbol of Mughal power. He took the Koh-i-Noor, the diamond of kings, and he left the empire in ruins. Not long after, new enemies rose. The Marathas, bold and fast. They struck like lightning. The British first came as traders, polite smiles, gentle bows. Then came soldiers, cannons, flags. The empire shrank with every sunrise. From sea to desert, palace to fort, the sun began to set. But a whisper echoed through the dust. This is not the end. The Mughals were fading, but their story still burned. Somewhere, someone would try to light the flame again. Chapter 12, The Last Flame. Bahadur Shah Zafar, the last ember of a dying fire, an emperor in name, a poet in soul. His court was no longer filled with warriors, but with verses, music, fading glory. The Mughal Empire was a ghost, and Zafar ruled from the ruins of once golden Delhi. Then came 1857. A spark lit the dry earth. The Indian Rebellion. Sepoys rose in fury. The people cried for freedom. Old swords were drawn from dusty walls. They needed a face, a name, a banner. They turned to Zafar. The poet became a symbol. The past rose again. The red fort buzzed with hope. Cannons roared. Rebels marched. Zafar, old and tired, stood tall once more. But hope, like fire, needs more than sparks. The British came, fierce, ruthless, unstoppable. They stormed Delhi with iron and flame. The red fort fell. Zafar's sons were dragged into the streets, executed, their heads delivered to him in a sack. The emperor said nothing. His heart had already shattered. The British exiled him to Burma, a prisoner with no throne, no crown, no sons. He died far from Hindustan. No flags, no army, only silence. He wrote with shaking hands, "Duga zamin bhi na mili kafan ke liye." Not even 2 yards of earth to be buried in. The last flame had flickered out, but in the ashes, the story still smoldered. Chapter 13, Echoes of Empire. The Mughal Empire had fallen, but something lingered. Not armies, not thrones, but a spirit, bold, beautiful, unbreakable. It lived in the walls of ancient forts. It sang in the wind that passed over crumbling palaces. It glowed on the white skin of the Taj Mahal under moonlight, like a ghost that refused to fade. The Mughals were gone, yes, but their art lived, in paintings that breathed with color, kings frozen in glory on fading silk. Their science whispered in old books, astronomy, medicine, maps of stars and worlds. Their gardens still bloomed, where water flowed like poetry, and trees stood like prayers. In Delhi, Agra, Lahore, the stones still speak. Walk through the red fort and feel it, the echo of footsteps, the scent of rose oil and gunpowder, the quiet rustle of silks in forgotten halls. 1,000 years may pass, but in every arch, every dome, every carved word, the Mughals remain. Not just history, not just names, but a legend stitched into the soul of a land, a legacy that refuses to sleep. Chapter 14. The Legacy. The Mughals are gone, but their legacy blazes like fire across centuries. They gave India unity, not just in land, but in spirit. They did not just conquer, they created. Architects shaped domes that touched the sky. Chefs stirred pots that blended Persia, India, and spice into unforgettable flavors. Poets wrote verses that still haunt the wind. They gave the world the Taj Mahal, yes, but they also gave it new languages, new tastes, new dreams. Their courts were theaters of splendor, music in the air, debates on the floor, colors dripping from every wall. They forged alliances with swords and with weddings. They brought together Hindu and Muslim, Turk and Rajput, Persian and Punjabi. Where others divided, they dared to blend. Their roads connected kingdoms. Their canals fed cities. Their minds looked to the stars. Even when their empire faded, their ideas sparked revolutions. Freedom fighters later remembered their courage. Writers remembered their fire. They taught the world one truth. Empires rise. Empires fall. But beauty, true beauty, endures. Their monuments still stand. Their stories still breathe. Their spirit still runs through the veins of a nation. And in every child who dreams bold, the Mughals live again. Chapter 15. The Empire Within. Not all empires are carved with swords. Some are built in silence, in hearts. Every person holds an empire, not of stone, but of dreams. Not ruled by armies, but by courage. Within you a throne awaits. Like Babur, you will face storms, cold, cruel, endless. But rise anyway. Like Akbar, you must break walls, not with war, but with ideas. Like Shah Jahan, let love shape what time cannot erase. And like Zafar, when all is lost, let your words become immortal. Your empire may not wear a crown, it may not raise flags, but it will be real, fierce, brilliant, your own. For the Mughal Empire does not just live in books or marble, it lives in you, in your battles, in your visions, in your voice that dares to defy silence. The world remembers emperors, but it also remembers those who dream like emperors. So rise, walk boldly, build your empire, let the world hear your roar, and like the Mughals of old, leave behind a legacy that time will never silence.